Hello and welcome back to Red Fox Classics, where we are continuing on the restoration of this 1969 Mark II GT6. If you're new to the channel, there's been about 20 odd videos on this so far, so playlist is up here if you want to check it out. And we've been mostly working on rust repair. Done a lot in the middle of the body, got the sills and A post and B post. Bonnet needs revisiting, but I'm waiting till I've bought a new front valance to do that, because I want to make sure the front of the wing, front of the bonnet, will line up nicely with that before starting to cut this replacement wing. So we're going to move towards the back of the car and look at the rear wheel arch. So you see there's a bit of pitting here which probably needs plating out. I need to have a better look. And the bigger problem is behind this shock support bracket. This is a common area on the Rotoflex cars that rots because there's two layers of metal and it's in a wheel arch. So it just gets sprayed with muck and naturally dissolves. So I'm going to have a clean up on this side and on the other side, and we'll see how bad the damage is. Okay, I have spent some time cleaning up and managing to get this bolt free. And we can see from the inside that there is a lot of rust between those two layers. So I'm thinking what I'm going to have to do is take the whole bracket off. And the reason for that is that I can see I'm going to need to repair under here. And the spring tunnel overlaps this wheel arch panel under here. So I have no desire to cut this into pieces, and I also don't think taking out a section of the spring tunnel inside the car is I think that's going to be harder in the long run. But obviously this is where the shock mounts, so it's an important piece of the suspension geometry, and therefore I need to get it back in the right place. So I'm just thinking about what I can do. What I want to do is make something that I can bolt to this and bolt to probably at least the shock. This would be the shock mount if it was a non-Rotoflex car. So I think something bolt to this and bolt to that and some other point, which will mean I can then take all of this bracketry off and put it back. It doesn't really matter if it goes back in the right place in terms of most of it, but it does matter that this point where we actually have suspension attachments remains in the right place. So I will see what I can come up with. So this is what I've come up with. Continued butchering our old TV stand, and I've made this thing that bolts onto the seatbelt mount points and the shock mount using the original bolts. Well, all the original bolts, except for I've just drilled that hole because I'm putting a new one in. And it's pretty sturdy and will let me put that back where it came from. So now I'm going to try and get this whole bracket off. So I will go and drill out a really large number of spot welds, and I'll see you when I'm done. Well, that wasn't easy. So I best get this cleaned up and see what remains. And probably the first thing I'll do is just a flat bit here, because that's quite a nice large bit, and it will feel like I've done something. Okay, so it's cleaned up a bit. That is pretty rough, and I'm thinking the pragmatic thing to do will be to get one of the conversion kits you can now buy to let you mount shock absorbers on the chassis for a Rotoflex GT6. And in fact, even as I'm intending to go for a CV conversion rather than use the Rotoflex, I might not even need that. But I think putting this back, it's going to take a lot to repair. You see, more's fallen off it there. It's really gone up above the shock mount there. See now there's a pinhole in the shock mount itself. The reinforcement plate is really fairly dead. So, at least for the time being, I'm just going to fill in this hole, repair the body, and I'm not intending right now putting the shock mounting back on the body. Instead, put it on the chassis. So, with that, I've also tried to clean up this spare bit of Wheelarch I've got. It's a bit better, so at least the top bit is a bit better than what was on the car, but only a bit. And it's covered in this really sticky, horrible underseal. So I think before I spend any more time on this, I'm going to try and make my own. So I did something similar when I did the repair on my Herald's spare wheel well, which was, you know, before I started filming stuff, but I shall find and stick up some pictures. And I was able to get a pretty good shape by bending a curve into a piece of sheet metal and then shrinking the inner edge in the manner you'd do if you were trying to make an angled corner piece. So I'm going to give that a go first, and then if that fails, well, there's these bits of Wheelarch to fall back on. Okay, so I've deliberately started with a much bigger bit of steel than I need, and I bent myself a curve in it which is about the right shape. Perhaps not the smoothest, but we're going to have to hit it a lot with a hammer. So I'll just bend that in using this not very well thought out construction. And I started with a big bit of metal because that gives me plenty of leverage to lean on to actually make that bend. So I cut off here and then start shrinking it and see how that goes. So I had a bit of a go at this yesterday. I quickly realised that the kick shrinker was not going to be aggressive enough. So I started trying to do a bit of tuck shrinking, but I don't really have the tools for that. So I've ordered myself a Teflon hammer, and I've got to make myself something else to do that. But I'm going to wait for the hammer to arrive. I've had a further clean up of this, and it looks like it's just too pitted to use. I mean, even if we were able to use this section, it's just really quite rusty, which is a shame. But what it will work as is a pretty decent template, so that's alright. So, well, I'm not doing any of that. I think I can work on the flat section, which is going to be like there. So I'll first make myself this shape, or template of this shape, and then it should just be a case of having a flat piece of steel with kind of an arc there and making this spring tunnel edge. So I have to make something well, clearly not a bit like this, because that does not seem right. Yeah, it's better. Well, that shows those curves are more or less symmetrical. Anyway, I'm going to make something a bit like that. But with an extra lip on that bottom edge, particularly because that's going to need to be about like 5mm to bend round to form the nice edge there. So let's get the cut out. Right, so that's roughly cut. I've just gone and tidied up the markings for the bottom bit. And now what I'm going to do is just take some pliers and start to try and make that bend, and then hopefully finish off with the hammer and dolly. Or try this. Okay, let's see how it looks on the car. I think that'll go in there fine, with a bit of trimming. So, I'll come in here and get rid of all these remains, tidy up that cut, and see what the edge of this looks like underneath, because obviously that might need some repair, or will need some repair. And work on getting this cut in.
So here I managed to fat finger my camera into slow motion mode and lost the audio because it doesn't record the audio in slow motion for obvious reasons. But I'm just going to be making a piece to go on the edge of this suspension tunnel by taking that bent bit of metal and shrinking in the corner, which worked out quite well, and it fits nicely in that space. So it did require a little bit of hammer work on this improvised dolly, just to flatten out that edge and shape the curve.
Right, so that's in. Not the easiest thing or the prettiest thing I've ever welded. This kind of got in the way quite a lot, but it's done. I was able to reach underneath and do some touch up from the other side. I'm going to have to get this ground. The other side can wait till I've got some better access. One small bit done, one step forward, and where's my... Next thing will be to start trimming these edges to start getting this thing fitted into the flat bit of that hole. So I've got that ground. I've just started trimming up the edges of this so that I can fit the lip section in there. And once I'm happy with that, I'm going to be able to mark out probably on the inside of that where I'm going to cut and start to get it fitted in properly to this flat section. So I've been starting to trim up this bit. I've got it to fit around the bottom, and I've got some marks where I'm going to cut it. These are mostly cleaned up now. I've just been getting this little tab finished. It actually didn't have very much on here before, but I'm going to have a bigger bit and get that lined. Putting this bigger bit on, and I'm going to spot weld it, I think, because I'm probably going to be able to get spot weld it in through the remaining hole. And yeah, so I'll get that ground, get that thing ground and cleaned up, and then fit the inner arch in. Right, so I got that piece and this lot under here in weld through primer, and while that's been drying, I've been getting on with something else. So I'm going to myself this, which is a tucking fork. I'll link a video explanation because it's not my idea, but that's going to help me build my Wheelarch panels, because it's going to let me do much more aggressive shrinking than I've been able to do with the kick shrinker. Also to help with that, I've dug out these, which are some old bed posts. The rest of the bed is now in that metal folder. It's part of that metal folder. And I've cut the top off of one, which is still hot. And I'm working on flattening this out, and then I'm going to put a very shallow crown onto it to use it as a dolly for making the Wheelarch. And this is also going to be hammering just as it is, because that's a lovely smooth round curve. As you can see, it's pretty awful today, so I'm not sure quite how much more I'm going to do on the car, at least, because I don't be sat there welding with rain blowing on me, particularly. Right, so that's him. I realised kind of as welding this bit, which is the extra tab I added to hold this cross member on, that I think the curve is probably going to go through there, so I might find myself chopping that off again. But, you know, it's metal, we can cut it and weld it again, can't we? Anyway, I've got some more making of things to do. before I get on and filling this hole. Well, making tools to make that. And there we are, ground down. Keep having to remind myself, don't go too mad, because it is a Wheelarch. It is going to be covered in stone chip, and you know, the fact that there's a well visible is not a problem. Inside is going to be carpeted again, so I don't need to go too far. Now I have just double checked on this, and it's very pitted. I think, if my attempt at making something completely fails, I might reconsider using it, but probably best not at the moment. You know, I've got a long way to go before that looks like that. So while I was poking about yesterday in this Wheelarch, I spotted this here, which is just a sign of this metal starting to rot through. So I'm going to take a chunk of this out and see what the inner flange looks like. Hopefully it won't be too bad, but you know, as I feel this now, there's definitely lumpiness here, which suggests we are rotting through in that area. Just very, very early stages of it. And I might go a bit further up to try and get rid of some of this pitting, but I'm not too sure. Anyway, let's break out the angle grinder and cut more stuff away. So it really was just there. Most of that bit I cut out is actually pretty solid, except for where we could see it coming through. And similarly, this was here was, well, there wasn't much of it left. So, still happy I've gone a bit further because it lets me be sure what's going on. But even with the damage we're finding, this car still is in remarkably good condition. So, I'm just going to fill in this little bit where I've cut out, tidy it off, and then make the section to go in here. I've got that little repair in and ground. I've just flattened out the bit I took out because I can go around it and cut out a new bit of metal about the right shape. It's got a slight curve in it with this flange in, so I think what I'm going to do is make a slightly larger flange and use the stretcher on it and then cut it down again. But that's easier than trying to make a template. I've already got it. Okay, so that's it there. It's come out alright from the other side. And I've still got a hole to tackle. I've also got to go along this Wheelarch lip and give it a new edge in many places. So it's not really a job though I do keep saying I need to turn the car, and I probably should do it then, because then I don't have to lie underneath it. So my hammer came, and no, it's not very far from the camera, it's just small. So I didn't read the listing. But anyway, I don't think it's going to work very well. So I'm just going to continue with steel and see how we get on. It's going to make more marks, but I just want to give this a go, really. So the idea is I make that wrinkle, then lock it in place, flattening that end down. And then planche out the rest of it. A better dolly might help, mightn't it?
But anyway, you can see the curve has gone more curvy when I've done that. So I'm going to continue along and see what I can do with this. There's still quite a long way to go, but at least that middle section's sort of there. I suppose that means that bend needs to increase too. Well, I've had a go. And I've got a reasonable amount of shape into this panel, but I'm just not. There's so much more curve that needs to go into it. You know, I might have been able to kind of make maybe this bit, and I need all the way down here. I think perhaps this is not the right technique. Or maybe you could do it, and I'm obviously not all that skilled here. But I think I'm getting to the point where I've had a go, and maybe the sensible thing to do is just buy a Wheelarch panel. Because now quite a large number of hours into this, and it's nowhere close. Well, I suppose it's close-ish, but it's still so far away, if that's different. Anyway, yeah, maybe it's time for me to go shopping. And if I cut it cleverly, maybe I can do both Wheelarches from one panel, because the curvature does seem to be the same. Anyway, we'll see what happens next. So yeah, I have caved in and I've ordered a Wheelarch. I've also ordered a front valance, an inner sill for the other side, rear wing repair for the driver's side, and a couple of other bits and pieces, but they're not here. And as we're just early in the new year, they're probably not going to come, and it's just snowed very heavily, so I was going to make it even slower. So we're going to finish this one here. Got a lot of stuff in the rear Wheelarch done though, so that's good. And it's just that remaining quite curvy section that needs to go in, which is not going to be too difficult once I've got the right shape panel. Then there's some more Wheelarch work on the front to do, and I think I can probably do most of that without the valance here. It's only really the very front of the wing that I think I might need to cut, and I don't want to do that without the valance, but the rest of the getting the rear of the wing and the middle of the wing ready to fit should be able to get on with. And I also need to have a bit of a clean up at the back to check what's actually going on and how much of that needs to get cut away. So all that remains to say is thanks a lot for watching. If you're not yet subscribed and you got this far, please consider doing so. I still need about 290 more subscribers before the threshold for advertising revenue is met, so if you can help me out there, that'd be awesome. If you want to help out in another way and buy a sticker, they're available right now. There's a shop link, should be on screen now. But regardless, thanks everyone for sticking around, and I will see you next time.